Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking on a feeling that is almost universally human, but honestly, it's one we rarely talk about with complete honesty. You know that heavy, sinking feeling in your chest when someone shares good news? It's this incredibly complex, messy mix of inadequacy, guilt, and frustration. Well, today we are unpacking a deeply personal and insightful piece of writing that confronts this exact experience head-on. It validates that heavy burden triggered by other people's life updates, and more importantly, it offers a really compassionate roadmap for actually getting through it. So let's dive in.
Why does a friend's happiness hurt? It's a tough pill to swallow, isn't it? I mean, you get a ping on your phone. A friend is getting married, or maybe someone just had a baby, or an old classmate is moving abroad. You really, truly want to be happy for them, but instead, your stomach just drops. You feel this sudden, sharp sting of inferiority. So why exactly does this happen? The source material we're exploring today breaks down this painful phenomenon brilliantly, and it reveals that this reaction isn't just you being a bad friend. It's actually a deeply ingrained psychological mechanism.
That brings us to Section 1, the comparison demon awakes, and how it triggers that intense feeling of inferiority. The author of our source material actually gives this feeling a name. They call it the Hikikomori, which translates directly to the comparison demon. Imagine this entity just lying completely dormant in the back of your mind. You could be having a perfectly peaceful day, maybe engaging in some calm, philosophical thoughts about your life's purpose. But then, ping, that life update arrives. The comparison demon silently wakes up and just abruptly wrecks your peace. It tears open these old psychological wounds that you honestly thought were fully healed. And the author notes that no matter how many times this happens, you just never quite get used to the shock of it.
Past and present self collide, and I don't know whose voice to trust. When the demon attacks, it throws you into this totally disorienting clash. You start asking yourself these frantic, spiraling questions. What am I doing with my life? Who even am I? You see a friend moving abroad, and suddenly you realize you haven't even traveled. There's this massive, agonizing gap between where you thought you would be by now and where you actually are. This confusion, this head-on collision of past expectations and present reality is basically the comparison demon's absolute favorite way to attack.
Let's move into Section 2, the weight of lost years, specifically looking at the ages between 22 and 30.
To give you some crucial context here, the author actually spent their most formative years as a Hikikomori. If you're not familiar, that's a term used in Japan for someone suffering from severe social withdrawal and isolation. So at age 22, this intense isolation began. By 26, their peers are, climbing the staircase of life, advancing in romance, building careers. Meanwhile, at 30, the author is still staring at the ceiling of a tiny 4.5 tatami mat room. When friends announce marriages or babies, it's not just the news itself that hurts. It's the incredibly heavy, stagnant weight of an 8-year gap being shoved directly in their face. It's that crushing realization of unrecoverable time.
And this realization of lost time inevitably triggers an endless, exhausting loop of self-blame and stagnation. Logic tells the author that regretting the past isn't going to magically bring it back, but the heart simply won't accept that. The regret of those lost years brings on this intense self-blame. But here is the trap. They don't have the courage or the energy to try anything new. So they just blame themselves for doing nothing, which drains their energy even further, basically ensuring that tomorrow will be exactly the same as today. It's a vicious cycle.
Which leads us directly into Section 3, past versus present self, and dealing with that agonizing gap. There is a seriously jarring dissonance between these two versions of the exact same person. On one hand, you have the past self, a student leader, full of this forced energy, tearfully telling a teacher they dream of being famous. And then you have the present self, an isolated hikikomori, severely lacking confidence, spending days entirely alone. The author looks back and wonders where that energetic leader went. Comparing the two is literally like looking at completely different people, and trying to mentally bridge that massive gap, it only makes the pain sharper.
But analyzing this gap actually provides a major breakthrough. The author had to ask themselves, were those tears from back then just vanity, masking deep anxiety? Looking back with a clearer, present-day perspective, they realized that those grand dreams of fame were likely just a cover. They were masking a deep-seated lack of self-confidence with big, flashy words. Uncovering these hidden truths and insecurities really helps explain why the comparison habit took root in the first place. Recognizing this is absolutely the first step toward dismantling the demon's power.
Okay, so how do we fix it? That's Section 4, changing the yardstick, which introduces a truly vital mindset shift.
This is the ultimate weapon against the comparison demon. The author realized the one to compare yourself to is not others but yourself from yesterday. As long as they tried to measure their own progress using the speed of a friend's marriage or a peer's big relocation, they were never, ever going to find peace. You have to make the small, but incredibly profound decision to completely change who you are comparing yourself to.
Think of it literally as changing your yardstick. It is your personal metric used to measure progress. You have to deeply, truly acknowledge that different lives run at entirely different speeds. They are fundamentally measured by different rulers. You just cannot take someone else's metric of success, their yardstick, and use it to measure your own unique journey. The moment the author truly grasped that their life speed was simply on a different scale than their peers, the tension in their shoulders finally began to drop.
So how do we maintain this? Let's jump to Section 5, Daily Habits for Healing, and walk through some highly practical strategies.
Here is a remarkably effective coping mechanism. When that pain comes in and your heart drops, don't let those feelings swirl around in your head. Step 1. Write down your anxieties, your frustrations, your jealousy. Put it on paper or in your phone's memo app immediately. Give those messy feelings a shape. Then, Step 2, review those notes later. What the author found is that they kept repeating the exact same emotional patterns. Once you actually see the pattern written out, the mind calms down. You can anticipate the comparison demon's future attacks, which makes them way less terrifying when they inevitably happen.
30. This number represents the ultimate shift in the yardstick. The author notes that yesterday it took them an entire hour just to get out of bed. Today, it took 30 minutes. That is a massive victory. It's a concrete, real-world example of internal progress. By comparing yourself only to your past self, a seemingly mundane, everyday act suddenly becomes a measurable, validating sign of growth.
And this builds into a daily collection of micro-wins. Getting out of bed faster, making just a little progress on cleaning your room, doing a load of laundry, heck, even sending a single text reply to someone. These might seem incredibly humble, but honestly, they are incredibly powerful shields. At the end of the day, if you actively count these small milestones, you protect yourself from the dizzying, overwhelming speed of everyone else's lives. You prove to yourself that you are, in fact, moving forward at your own pace. And that brings us to our final thought for this explainer. The author fully admits that the comparison demon might never truly pack its bags and leave forever. Old feelings of inferiority are probably still going to pop up now and then when a friend shares some huge news, but the burden is so much lighter now, because the control is back in their hands. The demon might be a lifelong companion, but we hold the power to choose our own yardstick every single day. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. When that demon visits you next, who will you choose to measure yourself against tomorrow? Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope this brings a little peace to your own journey.